a warm welcome to all colleagues at KfW. I'm very pleased and happy that we have Peter Cramton visiting KfW, a distinguished scholar who works in electricity finance markets. And Peter already started his career with good choices because his PhD advisor, Robert Wilson, received the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2020. So his choice of advisor was validated a few years after Peter studied with Robert Wilson. Peter is a professor of economics at Maryland University and also holds the chair of market design and economics at the University of Cologne. He does research mainly in three areas: bargaining theory, where he studies the role of time and information in bargaining. That was also the topic of his PhD dissertation. The second area is auction theory and practice. And then the third area is market design. And he has published over 100 well-cited articles in these areas. His academic education includes a BA in science from Cornell University, his PhD from Stanford, and then he held several professorships at Stanford, Maryland, the European University Institute, and the University of Cologne. In addition to that, and I think that's also why it's such a pleasure to have Peter here, he has consulted various governments around the globe and has been active on various boards of organizations in the areas of spectrum auction and also electricity markets. Not last, he is going to talk to the German regulator next week. So I think it's a fantastic moment to hear Peter talk about his research. And I warmly welcome you, Peter, to KfW. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fritzi. It's an honor to be here, and I very much welcome your hospitality. What I'm going to talk about is actually very simple economics, but it's also being applied in a very complex market, electricity, one of the most complex markets. And so that makes it seem like it's very complicated. But really, the basic principles I'm going to use are the standard ones from economics: supply and demand. Let's do what's efficient, which is set the price equal to marginal social cost equal to marginal social value. And so I'm basically going to be using prices to encourage efficient operation investment of our critical infrastructure, such as electricity, but it'll apply in many other domains as well. And in fact, this research began more than, 14 years ago. I've been working in electricity market design for the last 25 years. But about 14 or 15 years ago, I started working in a financial application. And so today what I'm going to do is show how the financial market design work applies to other infrastructure industries, and in particular how to get these resources operating efficiently in real time, but then also promote efficient investment. And this is absolutely critical for the energy transition. In order for the transition to be as low cost as possible and to provide what we absolutely must have, which is resilient, reliable electricity, we're going to have use market forces more effectively. And the big reason is that these resources are being used by literally billions of people making hundreds of trillions of decisions. And so we cannot fine-tune a million different subsidies to get the resources consumed and built in the right ways. prices do this beautifully. And so the idea is to harness prices to get the right investments. And I'll first explain how the trading technology can do this effectively. And the trading technology is called flow trading. It's actually been used in the United States for, I'd say 20 years in electricity markets, in the day-ahead and real-time market. And it's basically extending that idea to trade a broad set of financial products in order to solve market failures that are present today. So I'm going to start out saying a few words about the finance application. Then I'll spend most of my time in electricity, but at the end, if there's time, there probably won't be, but I'll try to talk a little bit about applications in communications markets and in transportation. And so those are three critical infrastructure industries: electricity, communications, and transportation, where these ideas apply essentially the exact same way. So when I say energy, if you replace the word energy with communications, then it applies to communications. If I replace energy with transportation, it applies to transportation. So it's very broad, simple ideas. And the idea from finance is essentially let people trade what they want to trade in complete markets when they want to trade it in order to best manage their opportunities and minimize the risk. And so that's the core idea. And financial markets today actually do a reasonably good job of that with the current trading technology, which is continuous trade in most of the financial exchanges of the world. But it actually it can be improved enormously with the flow trading technology. And what the flow trading technology does is it addresses the arms race for speed that is observed in every continuous market, which is basically the guy that's the fastest gets a prize. He gets to front run the other orders and steal pennies from everybody. And you might think that that's not so bad, stealing pennies, but there's a lot of pennies. So there's hundreds of billions of pennies. So you add it all up, and in the United States alone in equities, you're talking about $10 billion a year. So globally, it's significant money. There's no reason to waste this money. There's a very simple solution that allows much more powerful trade. And that's what I'm going to employ. And essentially what it does, and the real magic of it, is it allows completing markets. Incomplete markets is one of the well-understood market failures. A second is market power. So the way we trade financial securities today, this arms race for speed, it actually has got this prisoner's dilemma built in, which essentially the arms race is the arms race for speed, where we're all investing in speed resources. And I say we all. It's not the retail consumer isn't investing in it. It's the guys that are doing serious trades, like Vanguard and BlackRock. So they're investing, and all the high-frequency traders are investing in these speed technologies, which are expensive, and they limit liquidity as well. And so that makes it difficult to complete the market with a rich set of goods that people need to trade in order to pursue their objectives. And so what a company like Vanguard does when they want to sell $30 million of Google stock, what they do is they've got machinery that splits that up into millions of orders, and then they disperse those orders to all the exchanges over a period of 3 days in order to minimize the adverse price impact that they would have if they sold the 30 million all at once. And 30 million is nothing, okay? They're doing tens of trillions of dollars of trades over the year. So 30 million is nothing, but even Vanguard wants to minimize their trading costs, and so they do this. Every other market participant does it, except for retail traders that they can't buy that technology. And so the way they get compensated is Robinhood or Charles Schwab pays them for their liquidity. They're basically dumb orders that have some rents in there that other people can grab. So that's the state of the world. And when you switch to frequent batch auctions, which is a core component of flow trading, then you avoid that arms race for speed. Because everybody that, let's say you do a frequent batch auction every second, everybody can respond within a second. No, certainly every Vanguard can respond within a second, not the retail trader. And so then all orders that come in within the same second are treated equally. So you have price priority as opposed to time priority, which distinguishes the orders. And that eliminates the arms race for speed. And then the other element of flow trading is going to be using portfolio orders, where you can submit a single order for a portfolio, arbitrary number of products. It could be millions of products at the same time. And what you're doing essentially, let's say there's 1 million products, you're in this 1 million dimensional space, you're sitting at this position today, and what you want to do is move towards your ideal position, which is up here. And so the question you're asking is, well, how quickly should I move there? And that's what we're going to enable you to express, your impatience for moving towards where you want to be, and also your willingness to move away from balanced positions and take some risk by taking positions that are not quite exactly what you want ultimately. And you're eventually going to move to what you ultimately want, which is just the process of arbitrage. And so, folks that have greater risk tolerance are going to be more excited about arbitraging. So that's the finance piece. And I should say I've got a whole team of people that are working with me on this together that are mentioned in the bottom of the slide. And the other thing on this slide, I show 2 pictures. The picture on the bottom right, that is a picture of the U.S. interstate system. Now, the U.S. interstate system is interesting in that this was planned. We had a national commission that planned the interstate highway system. The highway system was well designed as a result. The network made sense. That's what we need to do for the transmission system in electricity. And so the top picture is a national plan that was put together by a U.S. research institute with very fine scientists and engineers solving planning models to identify where transmission needed to be built. But right now in the United States, we don't have a national commission for doing the plans. We have essentially chaos, and that is a problem. So when we look at Europe, it's a similar situation. Germany is having a very hard time coming up with a national plan, let alone the EU, about what transmission should be built and where it should be built and who should build it. And that's true for electricity, it's true for hydrogen, and so on. So one word about communications, which is essentially the same thing. There's congestion, and when there's congestion, it makes sense to use price to ration, to manage the scarcity rather than to ration and just drop. I mean, what we do in mobile phones now is when there's congestion, your call is dropped. And telecom doesn't know whether your call was valuable or not. It just drops calls randomly. And that doesn't make any sense. And then transportation, it's the same thing. If we think about roads, it's amazing that we don't price the road infrastructure when there's congestion, except for a handful of instances. And this would enormous, at least $1 trillion a year is lost in congestion costs in roadways. But we can also think of congestion in airports or anything else. So this technology is especially useful when you need a lot of products. And the reason you need a lot of products is because the commodities that you're trying to allocate efficiently have time and locational elements that are important. And that certainly is true in electricity. We have to balance supply and demand every second. If we don't, the lights go out, equipment is destroyed, and it's not a pleasant situation. We also have thousands of locational constraints. And the electricity doesn't flow where we want it to flow. It flows according to Kirchhoff's law. And so we have to manage all those constraints. The way we do that in wholesale electricity markets is with prices. And the prices work really well. When the prices are determined to be efficient prices. But as you'll see, they're not always using the efficient prices. They are always using prices in market economies, and even the non-market economies, China and Russia use prices as well. They just use really wrong prices. So we can do better than that, and we can do better than what Germany does. And that I will explain. Okay, so the basic idea in market design is incredibly simple. We start with an objective. What do we want? Reliable and resilient electricity at least cost. That's our objective. So we've got some issues that we have to deal with. There's potential market failures. I mentioned two, incomplete markets, market power. And I mentioned the prisoner's dilemma from the arms race for speed. So we're going to address those three, and you'll see how in a moment. Actually, market power, I mentioned why Vanguard's splitting its orders into millions of slices in order to minimize adverse price impact, reduce trading costs. That's market power. That's the response to market power. So when you're selling the most liquid stock in the world, there's market power. So things are not actually that liquid. Even selling 10 shares of Google stock is, you're going to experience market power and higher trading costs if you don't manage that. So those are the problems we're going to address. But essentially, we take our objective subject to constraints. We want to maximize our objective subject to constraints. And in electricity, the objective is maximize social welfare. And I should say as-bid social welfare, because people will express their preferences. We set things up so their incentives to bid truthfully are pretty good, and then we just maximize their as-bid preferences subject to physical constraints. So let me do one concrete German example. Many of you have probably read about the German power station strategy that was announced about a week ago, I believe, or maybe a few weeks ago. This is something that my colleague Axel Ockenfels and I are writing a paper on, which will be available in 2 weeks' time, let's say, something like that. May 15th, I think it'll be ready and distributed freely on my website. This is a power plant. That's a modern combined cycle plant in Dusseldorf. Very fine plant, very high efficiency. It's all 95% efficiency. It's amazing. The only bad thing about it is it's burning natural gas rather than hydrogen, green hydrogen. But that will, one day it'll be green hydrogen that it's burning, which is great. So those plants are needed because you need flexibility. You've got a lot of wind and solar resources that are intermittent. And as I said, you've got to balance supply and demand every single second. So if the wind isn't blowing and the sun is not shining, something's got to step in and provide the energy, or demand is not going to be fulfilled. And demand needs to actually be more price responsive. And so one of the things that you don't see at all in Germany is price responsive demand, and that's one thing that has to be enabled in order for the future world to work. So far in electricity, around the world, we've relied on the supply side to manage the supply and demand balance. But that will not work in the future because most of our supply is going to come from solar and wind that have a marginal cost curve that looks like this and then vertical. And so if you cross that with a vertical demand curve, it's either 0 or infinity. It doesn't work. So we need to have price formation, and the only way to have price formation is to engage the demand side and have responsive resources like on the supply side as well, like these hydrogen-ready gas units. So, and at the same time, we're shutting coal off, we're shutting nuclear off in some cases, and demand is doubling. So it's not like you've had flat demand for decades, but now it's going to double. And why does it double? Because we have to electrify everything, or nearly everything. So that is a huge step. And we have to do it relatively quickly. We're not talking about buying a new car. We're talking about changing the way electricity is consumed in the entire economy. And there is nothing more important than energy to life as we know it. Entropy is the natural law, and without energy, you have entropy, which basically leads to chaos and disorder. So life as we know it is organizing atoms and molecules in such a way that it's highly ordered so that it can do amazing things, like a modern CPU or GPU. And so all of that requires massive amounts of energy, and the energy has to be green, or the temperature keeps going up, and we have serious troubles. So that's the background that's so important, and why we need the flexible stuff. And so this response by the German government is absolutely 100% right. That in fact, and you might think, well, isn't this just command and control? They're saying, build 10 gigawatts of hydrogen ready. Well, that's not a problem because everyone knows that we have to have more than 10 gigawatts of hydrogen ready combined cycle units in order to have sufficient flexibility. So we know that this is on the efficient frontier, and the question is who should build it? So we do a competitive procurement to find out who should build it, and that's what this is about. But when you're doing a competitive procurement, the bidders are going to want to know what their cash flows are for the next 40 years. How do the bidders know what their cash flows are? Well, what's the biggest component impacting their cash flows would be the carbon price. What's the carbon price for the next 40 years? Fritzy's a very bright person, but I think even Fritzy is not sure what the carbon price is over the next 40 years. Nobody knows. And so that makes the investment environment very difficult. And so, nonetheless, folks are going to have to make guesses, approximations of how the world's going to unfold and what the carbon price will be over that period. But fortunately, in this case, it makes sense for the government to put in some protection to reduce the risk. And so the spread between the hydrogen, what one really doesn't know is what the hydrogen spread is going to be, how costly green hydrogen will be in the future, because that's going to depend upon how the government subsidizes the green hydrogen industry. Well, we don't know how they're going to do that. The government maybe knows. So let's put that risk on the government. So that's the part of the scheme, is that that spread between the hydrogen price and the natural gas price minus the carbon price is taken care of by the government to reduce that risk. So another sensible thing. So, but still, there's all those uncertainties about what the electricity price is going to be. What's the real-time electricity price? Or I'll say day ahead, because it's day ahead is going to be what's key for all these markets. What's the day ahead electricity price, which varies by every hour, for the next 40 years? Nobody knows. It's going to depend upon the market rules. If you have really bad market rules, the electricity price is going to be higher. If you have better market rules, the electricity price is going to be lower. The investors are going to have to be taking bets on what the government's going to do. And so who knows? Lots of uncertainty. How can you reduce that uncertainty? Let's set the day-ahead price equal to the efficient price. That people can understand, because we know what the efficient price is. We're just maximizing social welfare subject to constraints. That's the efficient price. The investors, these utility companies, have been in the energy business for 100 years. They know what the efficient price is better than anybody, better than the government. And so that's something they can calculate. The political prices, they can't calculate. So we want a system where the investors are relying on the economic prices as opposed to the political prices. And that's going to depend upon having an efficient market design. So my point is, not only do we want to have a competitive procurement, get the guys to compete, who can provide the quality goods at the lowest price, we want those participants to anticipate that the energy prices in the future are going to be efficient. And so how can the German government commit to that? They can say that we are going to reform our market in the direction of market efficiency. And that is the path forward that lowers the costs and improves the resiliency and reliability of the market. And they're going to do that by essentially following good market design practice, which is maximize social welfare subject to constraints, and addressing important market failures such as incomplete markets, market power, uncertainty, and the like. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And so that was essentially the key insights, that this 10 gigawatt procurement is just fine, but the way to make it work really well is to do the market design right, in addition. That it's not just an auction design problem, whether you do pay as bid or uniform price. You want to do uniform price because you get better price discovery and it's more competitive, but at the same time, what's even more important is getting the market design right for the 40 years after the auction, because that's going to really affect their cash flows, and that will reduce uncertainty and make the market work much better. Now, in terms of supply and demand and the challenges in electricity, here's a picture. And this one picture is unbelievably complicated. So I want to just have you focus on one thing. Let me, for some reason, the labels are missing, and I bet the pointer doesn't work either. Okay, so let's see the black line at the top. So these are the labels that somehow are invisible now. Oh, I know why. I made a mistake. It's not PowerPoint. The load is in black. Okay, so that black line going up and down like this, that is, you can see how every day, and this is January 2024, so very recently, supply and demand's going up and down. That's what we have to manage. We've got to satisfy that demand. Now look at the red line, the light red line at the bottom, sort of 1/3 of the way through, you see those really low things. That's the renewable share. So that means those are hours where the renewable share is really teeny. So the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining. So then the dark red, the bright red, is those peak lines at the top, right at those points. So the price is incredibly high when the wind's not blowing. This isn't surprising. Markets work. And that high price is inducing the suppliers to generate electricity where it's really needed. So that's a really good thing. That's the benefit of markets. And that's essentially what I want you to see in this picture. It's showing a lot more. And one other thing it's showing is how transparent these markets are. It took me all of 30 seconds to make that picture. And it's because I can just go to the internet and look at this particular website, energy-charts.info, and boom, there's the German data all beautifully visualized in terms of the type of resources, whether it's solar or wind or coal or what have you. And that's really nice. Try doing that for a financial market. There is so much less transparency. Try to do that for a gas market. There is zero transparency. It's amazing. And this is, minute by minute, it's really nice. And that's the way it is in the United States, even more so because we have the system operators providing all the data in real time, and then some that are could be used in bad ways for coordinating actions, such as collusion, are reported after a period of delay of 60 days. But that transparency is incredibly important, and as you know, that's the best. Transparency is the best way to root out corruption. And also just to identify problems. People make mistakes, and the transparency identifies the mistakes. The system operator fixes the issue quickly. Within minutes, problems are solved rather than many years. If you don't have transparency, that's what it can take. So the kind of products, the granularity of the products that I'm talking about is really fine. So this is energy, and because you're trying to manage your, let's say you're serving load, so you're a big, let's say you're E.ON and you've got a lot of retail customers, and you want to service them. You know what their load shape is. You're aggregating your millions of customers together. You know what their load shape is. And so you basically want to have bought electricity that follows that load shape. So to do that, you need time and locational products, because your customers are located in time and their consumption, in space, and their consumption is in time. So you do your machine learning to best model what you need, and then you buy it. And the way you buy it in this world of flow trading is you just go to the market, and there's an auction every hour for these million products. And you put in your portfolio order that says, this is where I am, I want to move in this direction, and I want to get there over the next 3 years, or I want to get there in the next 5 hours, whatever it is. And you put it in, and the order is persistent. You're actually buying in flows. So just like electricity, it's consumed in flows. We trade it in flows. Makes sense. That's what we do in electricity markets. We trade in flows, and that's why electricity markets really started with the flow trading technology. And what this does is makes it much more powerful by allowing the granularity that doesn't exist with the status quo trading technologies, especially for forward products. And so that's really nice. That's what we do here. And essentially, if you're E.ON trying to match your load shape, then what you want to do is buy some combination of energy and energy options. And the reason you do is because the weather is sort of wreaking havoc with your supply and demand predictions, and likewise, because that's changing the renewable production, and similarly, your customers are reacting to the weather. So in Texas, it would be a really hot day in the summer is our peak, and so then demand's going to be super high because it's a really hot day. Or in the winter, it's a really cold day, and then we get a super high peak because everybody's turning on their their heat pumps in order to get the heat going. Most of the heat's generated by electricity in Texas, and so that puts an enormous load. And so the idea of mixing the energy product with, which is time and location specific, with an energy option product is that you also have to cover your right tail. You know, what if it's super cold and there's a huge spike in demand? I got to be able to cover that, but I don't want to buy it ahead as energy because 99% of the time I'm not going to need it. So I buy it as an option with a trigger price, a strike price here of, let's say, 1,000 euros, and that enables me to manage risk really effectively. All the specific numbers that I give, like 1,000, it doesn't matter. It could be 2,000, 5,000, whatever you want. It's a big number relative to the cost. The cost of generation is more like $20. So, you know, $1,000, everybody wants to generate at $1,000. Okay, so, but that's, so that particular product, this was January 28, weekday, 12 to 1 p.m. So January 28, that's, I want mostly energy because that's really nearby. For this, you know, we were building the plants, and let's say this is something that I'm buying on January 1st, or December 2028, December 2027. So right before, shortly before day ahead. So I want mostly energy, whereas far ahead, I actually want to buy mostly option. Why do I want to buy mostly option? Because of fuel price risk. There's no liquidity for fuel many years forward. Not yet, not with a non-transparent gas market. And so I want an energy option. I don't want energy. This market lets the participant decide what minimizes their risk and maximizes their profit. And so the split, I'm not determining that. This is just an example of what the typical incentives would be. So let me jump ahead and talk about some more details of the market very quickly. But I've sort of hit most of the points, and I know we've got to have a time cutoff where I want to shift to more questions. So I'm not. So we're getting close to the time, but another 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, good. So here's a car. In fact, it's the Cybertruck, the Tesla Cybertruck, which most of you don't have probably. So I actually don't have this. I have the Model S, which is the sedan, the first sedan. And my Model S is an amazing machine. It's got the equivalent of 8 power walls, which are those big things you put on the side of your garage to store energy for your house. So it's got the equivalent of 8 power walls. This has the equivalent of over 12 power walls within it. And this is a great source of flexibility. An owner of an electric vehicle wants to be price responsive. And that is an important message of the day, that they're going to insist on being price responsive. Everybody takes for granted that all the automobiles are going to be electric in some number of years. They disagree about whether it's going to take 2 decades or 3 decades, but everybody agrees they're all going to be electric. So if they're electric, they're huge batteries on wheels. That's an enormous amount of flexibility for the system if you price electricity. And that's exactly what we do in the US. We've got a very fine real-time market, a very fine day-ahead market, both of which solve the same objective: maximize social welfare subject to constraints. And the idea here today is combine this with a very powerful forward energy market that then completes the picture. So you've got complete markets, you've addressed market power, you get this efficient or this wonderful cycle, reinforcing cycle, a vibrant forward trade, producing robust forward prices, which then induce efficient operation or investment. Think of that electric vehicle that you have. How do you know when you should be charging or discharging your vehicle? Well, those prices will tell you. You don't want to be bothered with that. Who could be bothered with that? That's a real nuisance. No worries. My watch can do the optimization to optimize my charging and discharge in 3 milliseconds. It's a simple linear program once you know the prices. And it's literally that powerful. And so the Tesla, of course, has the power to do that optimization for me. I don't have to do anything. I just have to tell the Tesla, I'm going on a trip, I need the tank full, or I just go to work, as I usually do, and it knows what I want to do, and in the future world is actually going to figure out what I want to do without my even expressing my preferences. But we're not there yet. But that's the way it's going to work, and so then I get this efficient operation of resources, but then I get efficient investment in resources too. Because what happens is now I've just by using, and this happens in California, my electricity bill went from $1,000 a month down to between $0 and $200 a month by optimizing the charging of my vehicle and my solar panels, and using my solar panels to produce. So that's the kind of economics gain that we're seeing from doing things the right way. And that's fostering innovation. Because now I'm screaming and yelling, I want to see the prices. My car wants to see the prices. And that makes the car much more valuable to me. So the cost of me buying an electric vehicle has just gone down by $10,000. So I'm going to finish in 2 minutes, and that's going to encourage resiliency. There are some of the details. There's some more pictures. I'll finish with this picture of the German situation, which sort of shows that you're not yet at the efficient point that you want to be at. So Germany essentially is in the first box there. No smart meters, so you're not measuring consumption at the location. So it's impossible for the consumer to see and feel the price. And if consumer cannot see and feel something, they're not going to respond to it, period. So you got to install the smart meters. You need to introduce nodal pricing, which is essentially allowing the management of congestion through prices. Right now, Germany spends about $4 billion a year redispatching energy, which is worse than spending $4 billion because it's providing $4 billion and at the same time damaging the incentives for efficient investment. So it's extremely harmful. It used to be $1 billion. Now it's $4 billion. Soon then it'll be $16 billion. This is going to go up. And then adopt retail choice. So that's the plan for Germany. Lots of good reasons. Resiliency is something that I'll close on. Resilience, here is Muhammad Ali demonstrating his resilience to Joe Frazier in the fight of the century. This is, and by moving away and avoiding the punch.
So one question of understanding from the chat, Peter.
Yes.
What are the 4 billion euros spent on? That was too fast.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 4 billion is to redispatch, is basically Germany optimizes, so they maximize social welfare subject to constraints, except for they ignore constraints. So they ignore transmission constraints. So they get quantities and a German price, one German price, because they ignore transmission constraints. So there's one German price, and it's the wrong quantities and the wrong price. And so they can't, the physics has to be satisfied. And so what they have to do is tell people that, like, say you're in the north, and so in this optimization, you were asked to generate a lot because you've got all this wind power that you would love to sell in the south. And they're saying, well, no, we can't take it. We don't have enough transmission capacity to take your energy. So let's pay you $1 billion or €1 billion to not generate. So you say, okay, I'll take the €1 billion, I won't generate, and you'll say, moreover, and I'm delighted, I'll even not generate even more. So you build another plant. And now I pay you, here's $2 billion. I really don't want you to generate. And you say, no problem, I'll take the $2 billion and I'll build some more generating plants where they're not needed. And so that's what Germany's doing. It's not the best approach. In fact, it's terrible, and we know how to do this. We do nodal pricing in the US. It's extremely simple. It's actually much simpler than one price, and that might sound counterintuitive, but it is. But the reason I emphasize resiliency is because all the major failures of electricity, the major outages in North America over the last 24 years have all been resiliency events. 3 of the resiliency events have been caused by bad market design, effectively. People being unhedged and going bankrupt. And so then, it's just like a bank failure. It's the same thing. And so the market doesn't work anymore. So they have to step in. And then one was just a really stupid utility that didn't trim the trees. And it caused, and the software was bad, and it just exploded into a disaster in the Northeast. So essentially 3 of the 4 events you can address with good market design, because it makes both the supply side and the demand side responsive, so price becomes much more effective than it would be otherwise. And that enables, that sort of lets you get out of the way when bad things happen, just like Muhammad Ali. It's absolutely wonderful. And then you can also recover more quickly. And so this is really important, and this really came to light to me when I was independent director on the board of the Texas system, when in February 2021, you'll recall we had Winter Storm Uri, which was a 50-year event where it was unbelievably cold. This is not what Texas normally looks like. 262 people died because of an outage of electricity that lasted 3.5 days for 1/4 of the population. And the economic cost was well over $100 billion. So a shortage and people die, and the expense is enormous. And we can avoid that. And yet the regulatory response has been a disaster. So that's the bad news. People do respond to price. This is households in the UK responding to price. So we've got a measurable elasticity at the household level, doing very fine econometrics with machine learning. And they're more responsive when they have low carbon technologies. So it's really nice. Even though it's small, it's large enough to fill the entire gap we had in Texas. So that's really nice. So the system operators can do this sort of thing. They should do this sort of thing. It's 100% compatible with their mission. And so they just need to follow through with their mission. Why doesn't CME or ICE do it in the United States? The reason is they're not motivated to. They're for-profit companies. They want to make money. They make most of their money selling arms to they're basically arms dealers selling to the high-frequency traders. And that's not good. So this is the future.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this inspiring talk. You've already inspired a couple of questions in the chat. I also had a question, but I'll put that back because we have now around 10 minutes. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is a lot of clapping in the audience. Thanks for listening. If you have questions, please do write your questions in the chat, and I will do my very best to group them and or also ask all the questions that we have.
If there's any questions that we don't have time for, which I'm sure there will be, I'm happy to respond to those separately. So they're valuable no matter what. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. So I'll start with one question about infrastructure, because I think that really in this net zero transformation is a key element. No? So how do you create the environment for the investment to really take place? We're not sure we're seeing enough investment in Germany, and so that would be the broader topic, and we have a question related to that in the chat, and that is, you talked about localization of prices to represent transmission cost. To increase efficiency in the investment process, wouldn't it also be possible to disband the merit price order, one price for electricity, by production method, so demand for fossil fuels with higher production cost is reduced?
So that certainly happens. So in electricity, we do dispatch the energy in merit order. And the problem with it is that works perfectly if those costs are reflective of the marginal social cost. And the answer, and this is where we have to price carbon, because they are not. And also there's problems with the incentives of the generators, contractual problems that are related to the financing of their plants and the fact that they're typically compensated by running. And so this leads to a lot of out-of-merit coal generating electricity when it shouldn't. And I know it's a big problem in the United States. I don't know whether it's such a problem in Germany. Where it's a big problem in the United States is the non-restructured markets. So it's and there's a very nice paper, recent paper that you can Google for, that shows empirically that the main point is that this non-economic running of coal is widespread in the non-restructured markets, much less so in the restructured markets. I say restructured rather than deregulated because electricity is all highly regulated. If you don't have highly regulated electricity, you don't have electricity, because there's no way that a true deregulated market can exist, because you have to balance supply and demand every second and satisfy thousands of constraints. And that can't possibly happen if it's not optimized.
Thank you, Peter. I'm trying to group questions because now we have a lot of very good questions coming in. I'll go to prices for a moment. To avoid the high cost of redispatch, should we have more bidding zones in Germany to increase incentives is one question. And then we have, so that was your answer, yes? So
no, a little faster. So just more detail. So yes, the more zones you have, the better. So 2 is much better than 1, 4 is much better than, and really you should have 6,000 nodes. It should be done nodally, and that's actually, lots of experience with that. All the markets have shifted from one price to zonal to nodal. No one's ever switched from nodal to zonal to one price. It's clear the efficiency gains are large, and it solves the incentive problem. And the problem is that with zones, no matter how you structure them, the zones are going to change over time as the resource mix changes. The zones you want. So you're always going to be playing this game of trying to change the zones, whereas the nodes can change weekly. So in Texas, we updated the network topology on a weekly basis, and there was no politicians involved. You change zones, Germany has experience with this, how difficult it is to go from one zone, Germany, to 2 zones, north and south. Well, the answer is, you can work on that for 20 years. You can know what the answer is. Yes, you should do it, and you never do it. So, yes.
Perfect. And then we have a follow-on question regarding nodal pricing, and that's whether that works if we continue to give fixed in-feed tariffs to renewables so that large-scale redispatchment currently is large-scale redispatchment is currently coming mainly from curtailment of offshore wind that cannot be moved.
Yes, so there's lots of, for curtailment never happens in my world, ever, ever, ever. And the reason is the price always balances supply and demand. And so, sometimes that price might be, minus $200. That's okay. I have no problem with that. The participants have no problem with that. In Germany, you have the German price can go negative. And so the locational prices are amplified even more. So they need to move dramatically. And that's why electricity is actually such an interesting area from a finance point of view, is because the prices are log-normally distributed. There's huge risk, and prices are moving enormously, orders of magnitude more than what you see in financial markets. And yet, this is what we're talking about is a financial market, and it's a very important one. So the answer is you let price do the job. You do have a lot of bad contracts. So a lot of the renewable contracts are bad contracts, and you basically have to do something to renegotiate the bad contracts. But that's really, so my view is let's make the pie as big as possible and do the efficient thing. And then if some people need to be compensated to bring them on board, we do that. But we start with the biggest possible pie, and then we'll have the most money to move around.
Thank you, Peter. We have 3 minutes left and 2 groups of questions. So one question is about, so we're switching for a moment back to incentives for investments. So one question is, which support model for green hydrogen investments would be more efficient for rapid technology deployment, subsidizing CapEx or OpEx?
So I think the answer in the US is we would do both. And I don't actually know. My answer would be the first thing you want to do is price carbon. Absolutely, that's the biggest ticket item. That's first order. So how can you do that? Well, do it in electricity first. It's super easy. It's a wholesale market. All the market participants, well, I shouldn't say all, but I think most wholesale market participants would welcome carbon pricing because they can understand it. They're making these investments in a world where the most important thing they don't have much feeling about.
I couldn't agree with you more, Peter, but one challenge is we do have a carbon price in Europe. We don't have one in the US, just to give one example.
Yes.
So in that
border adjustments.
We're not, so border adjustment because we're not in the optimal world of a globally harmonized CO2 price.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to have reciprocity, and that's what the border adjustment's all about. So we can price carbon. Let's start with wholesale electricity markets, and that's our foot in the door for then rationalizing everything else. But once you do that, then I don't really know about the CapEx versus OpEx, but it's probably some combination.
So and with that, I come to the last group of questions with 1 minute left, which is around technology. There is one question around whether blockchain technology can be a solution for the efficient use of energy. And then there is another technology question, which was what software and algorithms you use to gather and process your data.
Yes, excellent. I'd like to address both. So let's see, the first question was blockchain. So the answer is, this you want to do on as a central market, so central clearing. So, and the reason you want to do central clearing is because this is a straightforward optimization problem. So the optimization problem that I described with very rich bit expression, which is described in the paper, is a convex optimization. Convex optimization, essentially we can solve any granularity of products in time and space. So it doesn't matter whether we have 1,000 products or 1 million or 1 billion. I can solve it if you give me some time limit, give me 5 seconds to solve it, I can solve it in 5 seconds. And the reason is it scales linearly and is parallelizable in practice. And I'm warm starting from nearly optimal solutions to begin with. So in terms of the solution technology, all that is described in the paper on my website. If you just do crampton.umd.edu/electricity, the first entry has a paper that has our current thoughts, and that's going to be enriched over the next months. But all that software we will provide open source to anyone in the world. So it's all open access, it's all freely available, and any system operator in any country can customize it for their purpose. Now, blockchain, yes. So blockchain is very good for doing the settlement. So what you want to do is the settlement in the blockchain. Settlement occurs with much lower frequency. So in electricity, we typically do it in once a week in wholesale markets. You do it monthly in retail markets, where you pay your monthly bill. And that sort of frequency is just fine. You can do it faster, once a day. You can do it once an hour. All are technologically just fine. But you can't do it every second in blockchain because it can't handle that many transactions, and there's absolutely no reason to. But settlement is the only place where you'd want to use blockchain because there you're moving money and you want to use the really wonderful properties of blockchain for the settlement of the financial component to avoid the typical financial costs. So that's that. And actually, I think that's blockchain, and then I also address the software aspect. And so,
excellent. Thank you very much, Peter. I learned a lot during this hour. Thank you also to everyone who tuned in and for the excellent questions. So certainly also as an institution, we should think about how to incentivize households to install smart meters.
Yes.
And we should think about how electricity demand can be managed better.
Yes.
And we have to hope that the political price will not be too high when it comes to the optimization of infrastructure for the transformation.
Yes, if I can say one more thing, since you're a development bank and you want to develop not just Germany but the rest of the world, the benefits of this are much larger for the undeveloped, less developed countries. So Africa, just what we saw with mobile communications, you know, it was really transformative for everybody, but it was especially transformative for Africa. You know, what's the cell phone penetration in Africa? It's 89% now. What's the telephone penetration? 10%, and going to zero. You know, as it is and so this is just the sort of thing where the technology is open source, freely available, friction-free. It's just the sort of thing where then you can enable all this powerful innovation through technology, and Africa can leapfrog and compete with Germany, which would be good, and you know, outperform Germany if Germany isn't willing to make reforms.
Some incentives to do better. Thank you very much to you, Peter, for this excellent talk and discussion, to all of you.